G'day, mates. It's Kara,
Emily, Erin, Ellie, Maddie. Welcome to our podcast on Australian wildfires.
specifically the effects that it has on Australians' environment and biodiversity.
There are many things that cause the fires, but they are mainly caused by the record-breaking temperatures, which extended drought and strong winds have converged to create disastrous fire conditions. As a severe heat wave gripped most of the country in mid-December, Australia recorded its hottest day on record, with average highs of 107.4 degrees Fahrenheit. The extreme heat has followed the driest spring on record.
All right, now we're going to talk about how big the wildfires are. So, it is estimated that the total area of land affected by these wildfires is roughly 25.5 million acres or 40,000 square miles. And that's roughly the size of England, like the whole England island there. Okay. That was a good comparison. Okay, we're still going. So, the states in Australia most affected by these fires is New South Wales and Victoria, with New South Wales being the most affected, with more than 5 million hectares being destroyed and over 2,000 houses destroyed as well. And this also forces thousands of individuals to seek shelter somewhere else in Australia. And although recent cooler conditions and rain have stopped some of the fires, more than 60 fires are still currently burning in New South Wales and Victoria. Now that we've discussed how big the fires are, let's talk about how the biodiversity has changed.
Australia is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. However, over the past 200 years, it has been experiencing the world's largest documented decline in biodiversity. Over 50 of the animal species have gone extinct, in addition to 48 plant species. Since Australia has more endemic species than any other country, meaning that their species are only found on their continent, it's critical to protect them, which means protecting their habitat, since habitat destruction is the number one cause of loss of biodiversity and the main reason species go extinct. The cause of the previous decrease in biodiversity is the population growth and urbanization, and now the wildfires pose an even greater threat to biodiversity of the island. Over 30% of wildlife habitats in Australia have been destroyed already in the fires, along with an estimate of 1 billion animals dead. There are reports of 25,000 koalas dying throughout Australia as a result of the fires and having nowhere to go. I'm sure you're probably wondering why it's important to have and maintain species variation in a population. Australia's biodiversity is critical for the environment and economy of Australia. Every species is critical to the ecosystem. For example, bilbies, which are basically small marsupials that look like a cross between a rat and a rabbit. Anyways, they dig burrows underground, which helps the whole ecosystem with things such as improved water filtration and plant germination. When their population began to decline, other populations in their ecosystem began to decline as well. This is just one example that shows how important it is to maintain balance in ecosystems because every animal is dependent on one another. Another important factor to keeping biodiversity is ecosystem goods and services. So some of the ecosystem goods and services in Australia include food, medicine, and timber, as well as providing oxygen, purifying water, and controlling pests. These ecosystem services provide hundreds of billions of dollars to the Australian economy, as well as industries related to the biodiversity of the area, such as fish hatcheries, wildlife services, as well as industries related to biodiversity of the area, such as fish hatcheries, wildflower exports, and kangaroo harvesting, provide hundreds of billions of dollars to the Australian economy. It will be interesting to see how the decline of biodiversity occurring throughout Australia will impact job availability. and the economy. Speaking of how the wildfires affect on biodiversity will impact ecosystem services, here are Emily and Ellie with more research on the topic.
The fires have a detrimental effect on ecosystem services, especially those provided by the forest. Trees provide air filtration, regulation of temperature, shade, soil stability, and shelter for animals. The trees burning down means less habitats are available for the struggling animals, and the fact that land will be less shaded is a problem in the future because of the effects of global warming. This creates a large threat for biodiversity because of these reasons.
The carbon emissions resulting from these fires are one of the most concerning things. In the past 3 months, the bushfires have emitted the same amount of carbon dioxide as Australia's annual rate up until this point, which is 400 megatons. With the increase in greenhouse gases being put into the atmosphere, the severity of global warming also increases. This could turn into a destructive feedback loop because global warming increases risk for future wildfires. Also, something that most people might not think about is the harmful effects of the ash in addition to the fires themselves. The ash and debris that falls into the water sources contaminate them and encourage growth of algae. The increase in algae growth causes eutrophication, and once the algae dies, it starves the aquatic organisms of the dissolved oxygen that they need from the water as they're struggling to survive. The ash can also trigger respiratory conditions in animals and humans, decreasing quality of life and health in general. The fires have caused a dramatic increase in surface air temperature and evapotranspiration, and paired with the human activity prior to the fires, desertification is a devastating result. This especially hurts the agriculture and livestock industry because it wipes out the fields used for farming and grazing.
So now we're going to talk about how the trees are affected by the fires that have been going on. So the high temperature of the fires combined with the droughts throughout many parts of Australia has led to the death of many plant species. So there's a pretty high plant mortality rate going on. And the eucalyptus tree covers more than 3/4 of Australia's forested area. And they were previously pretty fire resistant, but they had been deprived of carbon due to the drought, which left them weak. So when the fire came along and struck the area, many of the trees died. So the plant species in Australia, this isn't their first time dealing with fires. They've been dealing with frequent fires for millions of years. So naturally they had to evolve and develop the ability to recover after being burnt. So for many species, the way of doing this was by epicormic buds, and these buds are embedded deep within the bark of the tree, which then provides insulation from the intense heat of the fire. Gumnuts are the perfect example of this. They're the hard woody fruit of the eucalyptus tree, and it protects the tree's seeds. So when fire sweeps through the forest, the gumnuts act as insulation. They will eventually open up and sprinkle seeds onto the ash. However, this is where the problem occurs. Because of the severe drought, the seeds need rain to germinate, and rain's pretty hard to come by. So I know Kara had previously talked about humans and their contributions to the fire, but now we're going to talk about trees and how they contribute. So when fire strikes an area or a forest, the strips of bark that hang off the tree and the branches will ignite, and it'll carry it up the tree. And since there's a canopy on the forest, it just expands the whole thing, and it catches from tree to tree. And in addition to that, the flaming bark and branches can then also be blown great distances with the wind that's been going on, and this process is called spotting, and it can ignite fires around 18 miles outside of the main fire, which makes it really difficult to suppress. Also, gum trees have leaves that contain oil, and this oil ignites easily and burns really quickly. So trees are ultimately the fuel for a fire.
As these fires have engulfed trees and brush nearby easily, how fast can they spread? Well, a forest fire spreads at around 6.7 miles per hour. Now, I know that number might not mean a lot, but when compared to the average person's running speed, which is 6.12 miles per hour, a forest fire is actually faster than a person. This has led to many deaths in the recent fires and in Australian fires in the past. These fires spread so fast that they have killed 27 people in this season alone. The most catastrophic fire was in 2009 called Black Saturday in Victoria, which caused 173 deaths in Australia. And not only do these fires spread quickly and are lethal to humans, they can also create their own weather, which can prove catastrophic as well. These fires create smoke, obviously, which forms up into clouds that can develop into thunderstorms. These thunderstorms can cause downbursts of rain or lightning, which can also trigger more fires. Such as a prime example of this is the bushfire in East Gippsland region of Victoria, which this past year in December created its own weather, creating thunderstorms that ultimately led to more fires as well.
All right, mates.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about the aftermath of these fires. So police have started accusing people of starting these fires, and there have been over 183 people accused already. 53 people have received cautions or criminal charges for failing to comply with different total fire bans, and then 47 are accused of discarding lit cigarettes or matches on land. So now let's discuss, should they actually be punished? So if people light a cigarette and drop it on the ground, should they have to pay charges if they start a fire?
Yes, they should. They could dispose of the cigarette in one of those container things that they're supposed to be put in instead of dropping them on the ground.
Especially because of the dry conditions from the drought, people should know better than to just leave lit cigarettes on the ground, because that would cause a big fire.
All right, so now we're going to transition into, I don't know how to say this, but an overall sad topic about how animals have died during these fires. And that's what we really care about. All these little cute animals are dying. So it is estimated that 1 billion animals in total have died from these fires, especially koalas. Those have been very prevalent in social media with all the pictures, and now they're deemed functionally extinct in the wild. So what's going to happen to them? Thanks for answering me, guys. So
They're gonna end up in zoos because they can't live in the wild by themselves because there's no habitat. So they need the zoos to provide them habitat and a source of food.
But they might not have the ability to survive in the wild if their ancestors never had those traits because they didn't have to hunt for food or do anything that would have had to do in the wild.
The reason that koalas are being affected a lot more than other species are because they're less mobile and are smaller, so the bigger species are able to run from the fires, like the kangaroos, and then birds are obviously able to fly away, and emus are fast too.
Which is actually a really good thing because, Australia's national animal is the kangaroo and their bird is the emu, so at least they won't have to pick a new mascot.
yeah. So, along with talking about how these animals have died, and I've said that there's been a lot of posts on social media, help Australia, help the animals. And I've just come across so many pictures of kangaroos hugging each other, little baby ones. So everyone look at this picture and say, oh, I will post this picture so you can see it in speeds.
Oh, that's adorable.
It's really cute. There's also a video that went on around Twitter as well of a kangaroo hugging a volunteer that helped the kangaroo escape from the fire. And there have just been so many volunteers over in Australia.
I'm sure that we've all seen all these posts on social media about stopping the fires, but what are people actually doing?
So celebrities are really endorsing all their fans to go donate. Go donate. An example of this is Kylie Jenner. So she posted on her Instagram story a picture saying, go donate to the wildfires. Go help Australia. Save the animals. The next picture she posted on her story was a picture of her wearing really, really, really expensive slippers that are probably like 2 or 3 people in the world can actually afford them. But the fact that she posted, go donate, and then posted a picture of her just living her life in luxury, well, I doubt she donated that much, got people fired up on Twitter. People were coming at her, as I'm an avid Twitter user.
Spreading awareness about the fires in Australia by putting on this concert called Fire Fight Australia, and it's in Sydney, and it features 5 Seconds of Summer, Michael Bublé, Olivia Newton-John, Queen with Adam Lambert.
All right, so thank you for listening to our podcast today. Make sure to like and subscribe.
And let us know what you thought of the wildfires in the comments down below.
Good day, mate!
Mega fire.
Yeah, woo, woo, wildfire. All right, so